Hello, my name is Simon. Welcome to Why Is That, a free speech platform where we explore big ideas and the controversies of our time. Hello, beloveds, and welcome back to another episode of Why Is That? There was a riot in UC Berkeley, California. People were put in hospital. Why is that? I had something else planned for this week, but was so shocked by the UC Berkeley riot protesting a speech by Breitbart editor Milo Yiannopoulos, who leftist groups circulated posters saying, "Come punch a Nazi," even though Milo Yiannopoulos is a gay Jew. Also, is it okay to punch Nazis? No. It's not okay to punch anyone except for in self-defense or in defense of another. Just because you don't like what they're saying, you don't hit them. And honest to God, where the hell are the Nazis these days? Nowhere. Yet to some of these groups, they're behind every corner. Some news outlets have tried to label the disturbance just as a protest, despite widespread violence, property damage, and looting of the area. A bit later on the show, we will be joined by Warren Preiss from Relational Y-Rapper. But first, there was a number of videos that went viral of women that were attacked at the riots by ANTIFA, which is meant to be short for anti-fascist, a group in the habit of wearing all black and covering their faces so they don't get caught for their illegal activities. And after seeing a spate of violent activity by the group over the last month or so, I was a little bit shocked to find a Facebook post on their page from someone in New Zealand trying to get support for a protest they were doing. And I think every New Zealander can agree, we don't want dodgy protesters who hide their identities roaming around the place. Now, both the women who are being interviewed appeared on Stefan Molyneux, and you can go on his YouTube channel and find the full interviews.
Hi everybody, Stefan Molyneux from Free Domain Radio. So in our continuing coverage of what happened at UC Berkeley when Milo Yiannopoulos was prevented from speaking by a bunch of hooligans and thugs and people more than willing to use violence in the pursuit of their political ends, you may have seen a video with a young blonde woman who was being attacked or assaulted with a flagpole and pushed up against a railing. This is Katrina. She is a listener to the show, and she's going to talk to us about what it was like to be there. You know, it's wild enough watching this video. You know, my heart starts pounding, and I get all kinds of fight or flight just looking at the video. But Katrina, what was it like to be in the middle of this astonishing event?
Horrifying, terrifying. Lots of words kind of come to mind. In the moment, it's very interesting to see myself on video because the memory that I have in that moment doesn't exactly match what was on the video. Now I see I was hit on the head. What I remember is someone coming, and I thought they were trying to attack my husband. And I just got a very instant sort of, hell no, that's not happening, reaction to it, and pushed the guy back. And immediately after that, I was pepper sprayed by this little all black clad ninja woman. And that basically took me out of the whole fight. So that's the second video I'm in where I am facing the railing and getting pushed up against it. That's immediately after I was pepper sprayed, and I just can't see anything. I am not even processing anything that's happening. Trying desperately to find my husband and hear his voice, and I can't hear him. I can just hear one of my friends next to me. And as someone ends up saying, you know, we got to get out of here, climb the barricade. So I started climbing. People were helping me pull over, I think. And unfortunately, I was in a spot where there was a little triangle, so I had to climb over a second barricade in order to actually get to safety. Climbing over the second barricade, I fell down and hit my head really hard. I'd been diagnosed with a concussion. And at that point, of course, was still blind, still had just, you know, they got me real good, like right in the eyes. And luckily someone took care of me. And pretty interesting. This was taking us up onto the steps where the event was supposed to happen, the Berkeley Student Center. The police were all inside the building. So they were inside this glass enclosed building looking out at all of the mayhem, not intervening at all. The legal aid person who was trying to help me banged on the glass with me, and we were begging the police to let her and me in so that I could wash the pepper spray out of my eyes, and they wouldn't unlock the building. So all I could do was sit down on the ground and keep asking someone to try and find my husband because honestly, I thought he was dead. And, we're still trying to figure out exactly what happened to him because he doesn't remember.
So what is the status of your husband at the moment?
He is recovering. We spent all day yesterday in the hospital getting him checked out. They were worried for a while that he might have had a bleed in his liver from the beating that he sustained. He turned out to only have a couple of broken ribs. No big deal, right? Just broken ribs. He's got cuts on his face. He's got a cut on his shin. He's also has a serious concussion. Pretty much going to be bedridden for a little while here while he recovers. And, to kind of put a little more context on that, both of us actually wore Kevlar vests to the event. So he got beaten so badly that his ribs were broken through a Kevlar vest.
Wow.
Now, for the second interview that I'll just be playing, just to set the scene, just a young woman who was talking with a reporter who had a camera on her and that, and she just finished the interview, and somebody just came out of nowhere and pepper sprayed her. That's it. She was just talking to the press and pepper sprayed. That is seriously messed up.
Hi, everybody. Stefan Molyneux from Free Domain Radio. Hope you're doing well. Tonight we're talking with Chiara Robles. Now, you may not know her name, but I'm sure that you know her face if you've been following the horrifying footage coming out of the recent riots at UC Berkeley that shut down a speech to be given by Milo Yiannopoulos. Now, she was the young woman in the, it looked like a Make America Great Again hat. It's actually a Make Bitcoin Great Again hat. It looks similar. She was giving an interview, and someone slithered up next to her and jammed some pepper spray or some kind of homebrew chemical spray in her face, thus disabling her for quite some time. She has the on-the-ground view of what happened that horrifying night, and it's well worth hearing. Here with Chiara Robles. Now, I made a catastrophic error in my description of the event. I referred to a young lady who had been pepper sprayed because of a Donald Trump hat. Now, to be fair, it looks a little bit like a Donald Trump hat. However, it is not Make America Great Again. Chiara, please correct me, just as about 10,000 people an hour did in the comment section. What did your hat actually say?
Make Bitcoin Great Again.
All right. Now, perhaps you'd just like to take people through, because, we see the snippet, right? You're being interviewed and some douche nozzle comes in with the pepper spray or whatever she did.
There were multiple douche nozzles involved. So the journalist himself the guy interviewing me was already getting on my nerves. For people who have or haven't seen the video, basically what's going on is that I'm talking to a journalist about the Berkeley protests, right? They're still labeled as protests. I wasn't even watching the media, but I just knew that's how they were going to spin it. It's like if you watch the news once, you've seen it 1,000 times. And I was getting so annoyed with this gentleman who's telling me, he's like, so why are you here? Why are you here? It's like, well, I'm here to watch, a speech. I don't know what you're trying to insinuate. Although, of course, we all know what he's trying to insinuate. So I'm starting to wrap up the conversation with him, and I'm saying, okay, well, props to all the peaceful protesters here, but I think there are very few of them. And thank God, my friends were watching out for me, because I didn't even think to do this. But, they're watching from all sides. They're like kind of protecting my back and whatnot. Like, I have amazing, amazing friends. Like, thank God for them. And still, even with amazing friends, even with an amazing crew, these people just come up and spray me with God knows what. Like, honestly, I said it was pepper spray, but I don't really know that. Like, it was something that burns your eyes.
Could be just some homebrew crap, and who knows what the hell's in it, right?
Right, and that's even more scary. So you mentioned this thing about Trump before in this truthful hypergamy. It's like, okay, I say it's pepper spray, and then all these protesters come out and say, no, that wasn't pepper spray. That was, infinitely other terrible things.
Brand X eyeball shatterer. I mean, what the hell are you supposed to do?
Now joining me on the show is Warren Preiss from Relational Y-Rapper. How are you, Warren?
Hey, Simon. Good evening. I'm well, thanks. Yourself?
Good. How's your group going?
Very, very exciting lately, Simon. Last week, we're meeting weekly, by the way, currently in Featherston, 7 till 9 p.m. If you're in the Wellington region and you would like to engage and discuss and be able to speak your mind on issues that you feel you may otherwise not have an opportunity to engage upon without being labelled perhaps all kinds of nasty things, here's your chance. That's what these groups, a large part of what they're about, is getting together and discussing the the issues that there isn't a forum, a public forum to discuss, especially not face-to-face. So that's what we're about. So yeah, last week was a very interesting discussion. Of course, what's happening recently, what happened at UC Berkeley, and what's going on in the States is very topical. People are noticing there is in their workplaces in Wellington, it's very difficult to be able to talk about opinions that don't align with the typical West Coast Democrat, liberal, neoliberal perspective. People don't feel they can talk about seeing hope potentially from the other side. After the Trump presidential result, and but there are people out there who are critical of the Democrat tradition and the neoliberal, the liberal, the tradition that has been dominant the last 30 years generally.
So just to put things in perspective, I mean, Wellington, being the capital, is a major big government town.
Sure is.
They thrive on big government, and they tend to lean left, and that aligns them with the influence that comes over from the States, from the Democratic Party.
Absolutely, yeah. That's where we see John Key having had most of his conversations with the Clinton-Obama camp over the last few years, and of course, I mean, prior to that, I don't think the Republican position was particularly much different either. It was generally much of the same agenda, wasn't it?
Well, I think this is why people went in so much for Trump. But I think this is fed on what happened with UC Berkeley, which was the speech of the U.S. The birthplace of the U.S. free speech movement.
Ironically,
and now they're having riots over a speaker.
Sure.
Milo Yiannopoulos, if people aren't familiar with that name, and why wouldn't you be? It's awesome.
He certainly put himself out there.
Because we were talking before the show about the New Zealand coverage, and places like Whale Oil, which is generally quite good, calling it riots, but then you've got most other New Zealand news services calling it protests or violent protests, which isn't a violent protest a riot?
Well, when 150 of the people are actively engaging in violence, and the other, how many hundreds there are tacitly supporting it.
And those are conservative figures.
Right. By the sound of it, certainly by looking at some of the pictures there, riot would be a more honest description.
Because we heard earlier on the show clips from two women who were attacked, and of course there was the man that was bitten unconscious in the street. Apparently, I didn't know this until I read up about this, that basically bringing these groups, left-wing groups, bring flagpoles, which going, well, we're just here waving flags, but they're actually smuggled in weapons, pretty much.
What surprised me especially is the accounts of Katrina and Kiara, that after having been pepper sprayed or had their partners knocked unconscious, and then having coming out of that scene and then talking with people, the assumptions of everyone they spoke with was that the police must have sprayed them, and that they must have been opposing these awful fascist talks, and therefore the police had sprayed them for standing up for this bad, awful thing. And it's the complete opposite. It wasn't the police that sprayed them, it was protesters, and they just wanted to go and hear a talk. And so it's so prevalent in that culture, West Coast culture.
The talk was on cultural appropriation of all things.
Right, yeah. On being able to wear a Japanese costume or any kind of costume, at a Halloween party. I think that was the general gist of what his talk was going to be about.
Yeah.
Pretty benign, isn't it?
Very benign, and
nothing violent there.
like things like they had a generator set on fire, and apparently one of those cost 15 to 20,000 US.
Sure.
Molotov cocktailed. I mean, and breaking police barriers and then putting the middle
smashing
railing.
ATM machines as well.
Yeah, and they raided
throwing rocks through the university buildings themselves.
They created hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage, all from one talk. Stop a talk about a guy wanting to explore the issues of, is it wrong to wear a certain costume? Is that really an act of violence to do that? They had the posters that they were showing to try to get protesters there. Do you want to come and punch a Nazi with Milo Yiannopoulos' face on it?
Yeah.
Now, Milo Yiannopoulos is a gay Jew.
Sure, that's right.
That's as far away as a Nazi can get.
That was once upon a time the identity that was considered, appropriate to go and punch and get rid of in a certain other culture in the 1930s.
Well, it's all sort of relative morally on everything except for Nazis. You can hate Nazis. Yeah. And there's a bit to hate there, but, it's just the last taboo, which hopefully is not one the left is trying to lift, because...
Well, it's like, any fascism requires a dehumanized enemy, a level of evil that is so, seen and viewed and believed to be so inhuman that anything is justified in stopping it, including violence. And so the last evil that you can use to label people with is a Nazi, and that has, it's understandable that, evil things happened in the 30s and the 40s, and they happened by Nazis. So now it's a very, very convenient, scapegoat or label or whatever you want to call it. And I think it was, I don't know if it was even Margaret Thatcher who said the new fascists will come in the guise of being anti-fascists. And that's proving to be very, very apt, isn't it?
Yeah, that's people usually attribute that to Winston Churchill, but even then we don't know.
Right.
But it is kind of, fascism is nationalism and socialism, and Nazis were national socialists, and communists were, of course, international socialists. And it's just this collectivization. You've got to join in the groupthink, or else you're wrong. You're so very wrong.
Well, it requires a sense of extreme, profound separation from one group or one label that you can lump people into, whether it's Jews or gays or, in the case now, white people, usually white men, that you can label, and then if they're in that grouping, they are essentially dehumanized to the point that anything's justifiable if they behave in a way that's not supposedly the right way for that evil group to behave, then anything's justifiable. And so, Milo, he's not even he's not a straight white. As you said, he's gay and he identifies as Jewish, but what he's saying is sufficiently decreed to be, of the position of white people and white men that he can be labelled a Nazi, and everything he says and anything can be justifiable in terms of stopping that. So I'm just interested in how we got to that point of view, and I can see, basically how things have gone in the last 30, 40 years, the changes we've seen in the ways of rearing children and so on. They are very conducive to building people with that degree of profound separation and profound entitlement and narcissism, that they would be vulnerable to that level of hatred, literally.
Yeah, I don't think people are aware of children that are put in daycare for close to 20 hours a week suffer the same symptoms of just complete parental abandonment.
That's
it's
right.
An extreme psychological trauma.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So,
that was promoted as the solution for a career mum,
And it's not a magic mark. Okay, as long as we're doing 19 hours, it can vary for... So, if you've got a child in daycare, please make it as minimal as possible for your child's sake. Because we're seeing, the daycare generation, people that have very little human...
attachment, healthy attachment. Yeah.
And there's no shocker that they become rioters and violent. No. And
well, that's it. You're left with a separation anxiety that is sort of waiting under the surface, easily manipulable, easily vulnerable to act out violently because of this hungering for love, connection, sense of belonging that they didn't get when they were 1, 2, 3 years old, and so on. While their mother thought they had to go out and work a full-time job because feminism told them this is what a woman should pursue, like a man should. And this has greatly increased the vulnerability of these young, especially children of educated class, who've gone on to university and so on. And inside they're still hungering for attachment, and they're needing safe spaces to feel some of that love. The other thing I think is significant, which sort of gets a bit lost, is the way that after children having not had this good attachment when they were very little, we've gone on to have a very child-centered culture to try and sort of make up for the harm we've caused these little children, then going the other way. And Jean Liedloff, I think, really puts this very, very well when she writes, "It appears that many parents of toddlers in their anxiety to be neither negligent nor disrespectful have gone overboard in what may seem to be the other direction. Like the thankless martyrs of the in-arm stage, they have become centered upon their children instead of being occupied by adult activities that children can watch, follow, imitate, and assist in, as is their natural tendency. In other words, because a toddler wants to learn what his people do, he expects to be able to center his attention on an adult who is centered on her own business. An adult who stops whatever she is doing and tries to ascertain what her child wants her to do is short-circuiting this expectation. Just as significantly, she appears to the tot not to know how to behave, to be lacking confidence, and even more alarmingly, looking for guidance from the toddler, a 2 or 3 year old who is relying on their parent to be calm, competent, and sure of herself." So then she goes on to then say, a toddler's predictable reaction to parental uncertainty is to push his parents even further off balance, testing for a place where they'll stand firm and thus allay his anxiety about who is in charge. So this is just talking about this situation of overly child-centering parenting. If misreading the child's anger, she tries even harder to ascertain what the child wants, pleads, explains, and appears even more desperate to placate him. The child will be impelled to make more outrageous, more unacceptable demands. This he must continue to do until at last she does take over leadership and the child can again feel that order is restored. And I feel this is a large thing of what's happening with these grown-up toddlers almost. The education has been very centred on them. Their parents have been very helicoptering and fussing about whether they're doing okay and so on. And this imparts a sense of hyper-vulnerability in children and ultimately insecurity, because they're living in a world where all the adults around them are anxious about them and fussing about them, and that gives the message that the world isn't safe, that they're not okay, that they can't make it in life. And so, of course, the idea of safe spaces is appealing, and the world being a dangerous place is very understandable to children to be raised like this. And that's what
even though people like us are looking, and it's like you're in the safe, one of the safest places, first world country. But
in reality, it's a very safe experience in any Western country. You're less likely to be mowed down on the streets, or you've got a higher life expectancy of anywhere in the world. Generally,
there's a funny point where, like, you can look at something where, like, the African American community, which 70% of their households are single mother households, so there's no father around, and you can, huge gang cultures because the kids join gangs, because of it, and these university students are getting involved in ANTIFA That's the anti-fascist, apparently, but, you can't tell the difference between them and actual fascists.
Once the anti-fascists start knocking people unconscious, one wonders where the fascist is.
But they've basically just joined in a temporary gang.
Right.
With them and the black bloc tactics. Just basically where they gather in a group, a block, and they're all dressed in black and the faces are masked. And, they just intimidate the hell out of people.
Sure. But, I just think a lot of these, even the ones who aren't perhaps directly involved in the violence are tacitly supporting it or, standing on the sidelines in some way being involved because they literally believe they're under threat from opinions that challenge them. Their world is one of hyper sensitivity to threat, which isn't actually real.
Well, we saw this with a couple of hundred were going crazy and violent and beating people up, you're putting people in hospital, etc. And the rest just stood around watching or cheering. There's quite a disturbing development in a civilized country.
Absolutely. I think one of the after all those disturbing developments, one of the things I found most heartening was this group of young guys from middle working class United States. I think on the website was the Trump Fan Network. I couldn't actually find out who the guys were, but there was a group of guys of all different racial backgrounds. Just looking at the picture, you could see there was guys there who were black and Asian and white and Hispanic, I don't know, but they were oblivious to obviously what their skin colours were, because they were unified in saying this is wrong. What you guys were doing here was wrong. Talk with us. Find out what half of America believes and cares about. Find out what our experiences are. Why we voted Trump. What it's like having the factories taken away from our communities and our parents losing their jobs. And these guys said, one of the things I found very heartening, they said, we will not be divided. You will not divide us. And it was obvious that they meant what they're saying, because a huge part of this drive of political correctness is divisiveness, to get people to see you as a person as being this or that colour and this or that, either an oppressor or an oppressed, depending on what colour they are.
To put some context to that, the guy who spoke did the main speaking on that piece, who's Asian, and that was at Shia LaBeouf's "He Will Not Divide Us" camera stream thing that's 24 hours, that's going for a year or two or something.
Right.
And you meant to go and Trump will not divide us.
Right. Ironically, yeah. But these people, you can't divide them, because they have experienced what it is like to get together and connect and actually know each other and communicate. They've grasped the sort of technology of communication. They know about using the internet. They make their memes. They have their sort of countercultural online sort of means of communicating and connecting with each other, and they won't be divided, because they're united at, basically on a human level. That's very heartening. And they're saying, look, talk to us. Put down your fists, take off your masks, and come and talk. So, these people aren't going to go away. They're actually only increasing, especially when you look in the States. The majority of the US states voted Trump, and probably almost very likely the majority of the population too is tending towards heading in that direction, saying we don't want to be divided. We don't want to buy into this identity politic culture of being a this or a that, and therefore having to be this because of my skin colour. We just want to realise we're all in this together, and a lot of us are very, very much struggling, and we want to have a better lifestyle. We want to have jobs again. We want to have our workplaces back. That to me is very hopeful.
And of course, if you want to talk, you can find Warren at Relational Y Rapper on Facebook. Come along. Now, my final thought on all this is, in the West, we don't really have to worry about imaginary Nazis. What we are increasingly seeming to have to be worried about are people who think they're fighting real Nazis, and they tend to be Marxist in character, and Marxism killed tens of millions of more people than Nazism ever did. # non-endorsement of Nazism.